Welcome to this week's Cattywampus Podcast. I'm your host, Kirk Driscoll, and I got a good friend of mine with me. I was able to convince him because I tripped him in the yard and drug him in the door. So my neighbor, fellow Rotarian, friend, and Mayor of Alpharetta, Mr. Jim Gilvin. So thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Kirk.
So question for you. I know I've heard your wife always call you Jimmy. So do I get to call you? Can I call you Jimmy? Who calls you Jimmy?
Everybody until I ran for office.
And they quit calling you Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, because then you have to put a name on,
Mayor Jimmy.
you know, and Jim.
Jim.
Quite frankly, I grew up when Jimmy Carter was president. I was like, man, he was an awful president. So I don't want anybody to think
that you're Jimmy. So you went to Jim, but needless to say, it's been really cool getting to know you as a neighbor. I'm sure that my kids and some of my actions you'll get to complain about over there every once in a while. But we were talking about, we got a chuckle over here. I heard a little chuckle because he knows it's probably true too. But we were talking about like how we met. We're thinking it was probably through Rotary. That was the kind way you were saying it, but it was probably because someone was complaining at the city about this jerk that had done something that he shouldn't have done, and that's probably how it was. But needless to say, man, I'm honored that you're willing to be here, and just being able to just kind of share with everybody, just to get another side of my neighbor and my friend. So thank you,
Kurt. You're one of the finest men I know.
We got to introduce you to some more folks.
No, anybody that dedicates their life like you have to serving others in the way you have, man, that's all I could ask from a man. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to know you and see what you do.
Oh, thank you. It's pretty awesome to, especially this city. It's a great city to live in. I was fortunate enough my parents made a decision. This is where they were gonna raise us, right? So, there's not really any reason to leave unless you want to go on a vacation. But there's plenty of people on vacation here, but my wife likes to at least leave town for a vacation.
Tell people all the time, if we had an ocean or at least a river or something, why would you want to leave?
Yeah, not very many reasons too. So, before we jump into that, I want to throw you one question just to ask. What's been your most enjoyable memory serving the city? Either a city council, I mean, you served city council for how many years?
I was on council for about 6 years.
And then you're in your second term now as mayor. So what's your fondest memory or favorite memory? You have a time?
I mean, there are a lot of moments that really stick out in your mind. And only because it just popped into my head. One of the most rewarding things for me, and I remember, because, I wasn't like a politician with ambition and stuff like that. But my mom's still alive. She's 87 years old. And she is so proud of me and what I'm doing. One of my greatest moments was when we had the Old Soldiers' Day parade after I first got on city council. And she got to ride with us. And she just loved it. I mean, it was just so awesome. I think she loves Alpharetta even more than I do. Just because she's so proud of what has been going on here and the role I helped play in it.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you for your service, without a doubt, to this city. So well, now since we can't rerun for office, I had to wait after this last election so I could get him in front of the camera so that we get him, let y'all know who you got as your mayor over here. But what's that cattywampus moment that you're willing to share, or event that you're willing to share with folks?
Like I said, we could spend hours talking about the cattywampus moments in my life. But when I look back, I think the biggest catalyst for who I am now, the change, that moment. See, I grew up in Macon, Georgia, relatively small town. It's probably the same population as Alpharetta, but very different demographics. We never had a lot of money. My family always worked, and we never really lacked for anything. But it wasn't like we had a lot of money. And so when I graduated from high school, I'd always been a smart kid, and I was a bookworm until I hit puberty. Once I hit puberty, man, all hell broke loose.
You didn't want to study books anymore?
Oh no.
No, okay. Yeah.
If they had ADHD back then, I would have been medicated.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the only one.
I'm telling you, you're preaching.
You hit that
And you hear the
part.
chuckle around here. It's like everybody's like, "Yep, I know what he's
Well,
talking
that's not- I'm
about."
just being honest.
That's what we're wanting.
And so instead of just focusing on reading books and doing great in school and stuff like that, I was wanting to get out and meet people, meet girls, and go and do stuff like that. And I really didn't know until about 4 or 5 years ago. I was actually at some discussion, and there was a woman who was talking about ADHD, and she said, boys, don't really develop their prefrontal lobe of the brain, which is the part that helps you realize there are long-term implications for the actions you're taking at that moment. You don't really develop that until you're 24.
Yeah.
And so in between about 13 and 23, I was cattywampus. Didn't really know I was cattywampus, but
I thought everybody else was cattywampus.
not everybody, just anybody but my friends.
Yeah.
You know, they got me and we got each other and stuff like that. But so like when I graduated from high school, you know, I had a 93 average in algebra 2, I guess it was, as a senior in high school back then. But I had a 16 homework average. And so I had to go to summer school to even get my diploma because I was like, I know this stuff. Why the hell do I have to do the homework? The whole point of homework is so you can ask the test.
We do have someone else does the books for the city of Alpharetta, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I just making sure.
But I share that to know the progression of it. So
Yeah.
I was just so headstrong and I was smart, but I wasn't as smart as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time just working jobs. I was going to community college for a couple of years off and on. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. My vision for the future was to just live a comfortable life, find a good woman, get married, have kids, be there for my kids because my dad traveled a lot back then and that was important to me. And so I worked a lot of different jobs and stuff like that, but I was spending most of my free time out in bars, going to see concerts and things like that with all my friends. Had no money. I wasn't making a lot to begin with, but I'd get my paycheck on Friday, and by Monday morning, I'd have about $4. And I'd go buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes and eat them for lunch at work every day. Just stick them in the microwave. And so I didn't know at the time, but I think some of it was biological. As I started to realize, man, this isn't going to get me where I want to be.
No.
And it's not like I had not grown up around wealthy people or anything like that, so I didn't have all these huge dreams. But it was just that middle class, be able to play golf with my buddies on the weekends, stuff like that. But I didn't really have a desire. I didn't have a calling, and so I was kind of floundering around. And I remember at one point, I was about 23, and fortunately, I was a little smart because I was working for a home health care company that had gone public and then went private again. And so I'd been working with them for those times. And while I didn't have any money to spend, I was putting into the stock plan and stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up, when they went private again, I think I had like $4,000 from all of that. And I sat around and man, I knew I wasn't on track. So I met a preacher that he had a office building cleaning company. And so I would go and work nights just cleaning law offices and stuff like that and toilets just to keep me from getting in trouble. So wasn't that I was making much money, but I wasn't spending it all away.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started focusing. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew, man, eventually I want to have enough money so I don't have to worry about money. And so I decided I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to get a degree in finance because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Whatever I was wanting to do, I wanted to make money. So I figured I'd learn how to make money and learn about all that and we'll figure out the rest. So I'm 23 years old. I went down to Georgia Southern. It was a huge change. I mean, I'd lived in Macon all my real life that I was aware of and stuff like that. And that was when I made that decision that my life is cattywampus. I got to fix it, and nobody else is going to do it for me.
Did you have a person that was speaking truth into, or you saw that? Were you modeling after somebody, or just a call, just a feeling?
I didn't have anybody like that in my life. Maybe it would have sped that process up. I mean, my father was a good man, and he hated to see what I was going through, and I drove my mom nuts, absolutely nuts.
I don't think anybody else in this room drove their mom nuts.
Well,
Not me.
yeah. Well, my wife still blames my mom because my son turned out way too much like I am.
Yeah.
And so Marianne, whenever she runs into my mom, it's like,
And
you did this to me because you told Justin, you told Jimmy that he needed to have a son just like I was. It served me right.
Yeah.
That has happened.
I can imagine. So that change. So when you leave what you're comfortable with, I mean, it's like, oh, everybody says, oh, you're going to graduate high school, you're going to make a change. Well, no, you're 23. You're 4 or 5 years after high school.
Absolutely.
So it had been
I've
really
been living on my own for 4 years.
Yeah. So it'd been really easy just to stay put and be like, okay, this is all life's going to bring me. But you made a decision to get uncomfortable, make a big change, and move down there. What did you learn about yourself, or how did you navigate
everything? I didn't know anything about myself until and I don't know what really was the light turning on, but it was. And I went to my father, when I started making, because they had watched me flounder in school, knew I was smart enough to do it, but not disciplined, wasn't motivated enough to do it, and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I guess I just got tired of what I was doing and felt like I'm not getting anywhere, and this isn't going to get me where I was. And so I went and talked to my dad. I said, look, I just feel like I got to do it, because they had to pay for most of my college. I had the $4,000, but even back in those days, that wasn't enough to get. I had about 2 years of credits I still needed.
So you finished up?
And they were very supportive. And once again, unfortunately, I lost my dad in '95. I don't want to cry, but this watch he had bought for me because of my graduation, and he didn't give it to me because I was such a knucklehead when I still graduated
From high school.
Didn't find it until he passed. It had to know how proud he was of me.
How did that feel?
Can't really talk about it too much, man, but it was powerful.
Yeah. That's, we just were talking about on the last show too. It's like that, the simplest intentional acts of our time or interest. It could be a gift, it could be a phone call, but it's the intentionality behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You never know the impact. I mean, that was how many years ago?
23, so that was 35 years ago.
Still talking about it. It's like, do you think he would have thought when he bought it? Do you think he would have thought ever that, oh, he'd be still talking about this watch 35 years later, much less wearing it and talking about it? That's what's pretty.
I think he probably was waiting until I settled down and would have assumed he died in 1995. I think he would have bought it a couple of years before that and just assumed, in a couple of years he'll calm down and settle down.
What was the biggest thing you think you learned about yourself during that time period?
I learned that I was the master of my destiny. Because you get stuck in I wasn't around people that did stuff like that, that just changed their lives. Most of people I knew that went to college, their parents went to college, they sent them off to college and stuff like that. There was a good friend of mine who I thought he was the greatest guy in the world, because after he graduated from college, he went down to the Virgin Islands and sold condos and lived down there for a few years. And he was like an inspiration to me. But you don't really know you can succeed in changing your life until you've done it. And it's a scary step. And it was putting me out there because I had proof that I could do it and I would do it. And once I got there, it was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to fail. I'm not going to fail.
Yeah.
And I share this with young people all the time. It's like, college is the easiest job you'll ever have if you treat it as a job. I've been working full time for years.
Yeah.
And man, I had to get up in the mornings. I had to go to work. It's like, get up and go to 3 classes, study a little bit. Man, I can still do all the other stuff I want to do.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's hard though. A lot of times, we find ourselves when we're in a situation, we lose sight, or I think we have the tendency to lose sight of why we're in the discomfort. We're gonna, growth comes a lot of times from pain or discomfort. Change is going to come generally from pain or discomfort. But if we don't have a clear vision and purpose or goal of why we're in the middle of this, then we'll typically, or at least I will divert it. Like, I'll just take a step to the left and I don't have to deal with that, versus going straight through it because I know why. Any level of pain is manageable because it will subside at some point in time if you know why. Like, why am I feeling this, or why am I doing this?
That's why I think a lot of mine was that biological. I just had to mature enough to think about what I was at. And once I realized the situation I was in from a broad perspective, because all my friends were in the same thing and we were having a great time and all that. And all of a sudden it was just like
a switch.
Yeah. And I'll never really know.
What was one thing that you did that carried you through that 2 or 3 years of school down there to stay rooted in that?
I hate to fail. Sometimes as a young person, even now, less so because I've had a little success at this point, but you're afraid to take those big leaps. That might have been part of why I didn't go off to college the first time. Because I was afraid that I was going to fail, and I would have. Maybe that was self-awareness, because the way I was at 17 and 18, there's no way in hell I would have graduated from college. And I got 4.0 all the way through Georgia Southern.
Well, that's awesome. But you came in with a purpose.
I treated it like a job.
Yeah.
Literally, man, you're complaining about having to study.
Yeah.
Give me 30 minutes of reading my homework. Yeah. Okay.
What do you think? What's one thing there that you learned about yourself, and not that I don't want to fail? I'm going to let you use that one because I want to be. But what do you think about that period in time of your life that you carried forward into the way that you're leaving the city?
I think there wasn't a lot in that context that I carried from that, other than there's the raising and the principles that I grew up around. My family always was giving, more charitable. My mom was part of ESA, which raised money for St. Jude Hospital and stuff like that. My father, when he managed people, he at one point for Jack's Cookies and the cookie distributor and stuff like that, when the company would cut their pay or increase the charge for their trucks and stuff like that, he'd take it out of his own pocket, just because he couldn't stand to see them taking the hit. And so I always had that kind of background of just take care of people. It's not about you. And I think that served me well regardless.
Without a doubt. Did you see anything as your kids go off to school speak to your son? We've already talked where Mary Ann said he's a lot like you. What were you able to share with him? Because I've been able to share a lot with my kids based on my past.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to tell you what not to do, but I can tell you what I did, and it didn't work out so well. So if you want what I got, do what I did. I would really advise you to not do those things. But was there anything you were able to share with your son because of what you learned about yourself that time period?
I think the biggest thing I shared with him was, it's not just you, man. I've been in, that's why I'm having this conversation now. People need to know. I wasn't born a little mayor. I did a lot of crazy.
There may be someone in the city. There's someone over there down on one of the streets. Like, there's a little mayor over there. He's got a little spot.
You laugh.
No.
Most of the people who know me now only know me as mayor.
Yeah,
And so they just assume I've always been the person I am, and I wasn't. I was a struggling knucklehead trying to figure it all out with no real path forward. And I was making mistakes and learning, but the fact that I could actually just tell them, man, I get it. I've been where you are, you know.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting. I want to piggyback on what you said. Is that one of the first conversations I remember having with you is we had talked several times, I'm sure, just through the city and Rotary and just being around the city, and not just all politics, but just from everything else. But I remember one of the very first conversations I had with you. You called me. Do you remember?
I remember us having to sit down in my office.
Yeah. So you call me, and it's that what's carrying over from your parents, or what they did of service and giving of yourself. You called me right after you won the election, because you knew the relationship that I had with our previous mayor, David Bell, a really good friend.
Sure.
And it was, I just remember, because anytime leadership changes in a city, or any political office changes, if it's those relationships that you're counting on and that you value, there's worry and fear. It's like, okay, well, what's this next? What's it going to look like? And it was that assurance of like, hey, I really appreciate what you've done here. I know that you had a great relationship with David. I'd love to get together for a cup of coffee or lunch or something, just so we can get to know each other better.
Right.
And man, that's leadership. And that's not just because you just won an office. That's because that's how you've been carrying yourself from some event that changed in your life, and you're just making that intentional time to include people. And so I really appreciated that and really valued it. And I was hoping I was gonna be able to tie it in with something that you said that aligns it. But that's a skill that was taught to you and shown to you. But then it's a desire in you that's like, this is important, and I'm going to continue to keep doing this and giving it. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. But I've always had a heart for what you do, because I look back on my life, and there, before the grace of God, I mean, for whatever reason, all the stuff I was doing, I didn't have an addiction.
Yeah.
But a lot of my friends did. And so I know that it's important what you're doing, and I'm really grateful you're doing it.
No, thank you. Thank you. So what are a couple of things you do daily to keep balance between your family, running a city? And the city is not, I mean, it's a full-time job, but it's not full. We got other work that we're doing here, right?
Right.
So what are a couple of things you do to stay balanced?
Balance. Well, I mean, my family's always a priority.
Yep.
You know, and my wife's not impressed by my office, so she's good at not humbling me. And no, gosh, no.
Yeah.
You know, if she'd known I'd won that first city council race, she'd probably told me that I couldn't do it.
Go
on. No. But I mean, it. You know, I'm pretty well grounded by the people I surround, because I don't typically select people around me that are impressed by my position and stuff like that. And look, man, I still go camping with my old buddies from high school and stuff like that down in Milledgeville.
Yeah.
So, but I mean,
so what would you say if you looked at it? We have this little saying around here. We call it the double D's.
Okay.
So a daily discipline. Is there a daily discipline that you think that you do that separates you from who you were to who you are now?
I mean, I try twice a day to pray. Pray, one, for wisdom and discernment, because in my role, that's the critical skills. And so I pray for wisdom and discernment either every morning or every evening. And I pray just out of gratitude for all the blessings that he's bestowed on me.
No doubt.
That would keep you grounded.
I will keep you grounded. Well, and that's the thing. I think that discipline you've got are those things you've done to keep yourself grounded on how you were raised. You know, so aspiring for more and wanting to be of impact, but staying grounded in the principles and values that you were raised as a child. And okay, I think your father would be really proud, without a doubt, of what you're carrying forward that he showed you and gave to you.
He's still around.
Yeah.
I just can't see him now.
Amen. Amen to that. So if someone is stuck, and we always do this where we look right in that camera. So you're speaking to the little Jimmy, the 18-year-old. He may be tall Jimmy, but he stumbled around. It's the end of a night and he's looking dazed and confused. And like life just isn't adding up. What would you say if you're looking in that camera? What would you tell him? Like what advice would you give him?
You can change your life. You have that ability. You may not believe it, but you have the ability every day. Yeah, you have the ability to change your life dramatically, or good or bad, but never think it's beyond your power.
That's that mindset. That's pretty awesome, man. So
You can.
well,
I remember one time when we were partying down in Panama City Beach. My buddies left, headed to Macon. I was stranded down there. And I thought, well, maybe I just won't go back to Macon. You know?
It seemed like a good idea at that moment, Don.
At the time, I was working for Piggly Wiggly in Macon, Georgia, making, probably $6 an hour. So I was like, hell, I can buy groceries in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Why don't I just pick up and go to Hawaii if I'm going to be living this life? Why do I have to do it in Panama City or Macon? But it wasn't until years later that I actually believed I could.
That you could do it in Hawaii.
I could have. I know now, had I really wanted to, I could have changed my life dramatically.
Oh yeah. But we don't, especially as a developing adult, don't realize the magnitude of the decisions we make. Without a doubt. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to sit here today with you because I made some piss poor decisions. Without a doubt. And so without a doubt, by the grace of God, I mean, it's not my power, my authority that got me here. It's His authority that moves in me, but I've got to act. I've got to make those decisions daily. I've got to do those things. And man, you and others, your willingness to serve the city, you have an incredible staff. The mayor is here, but you've got an entire staff. You're leading a team, and y'all's team. It's just the way y'all serve the city and the way y'all lead the city, from our first responders down to the person that answers 911 to people doing even the meter reading on the, it's like you go out there marking chalk on tires. I mean, everybody has got a sense of purpose of why they're here. And
you have enough time for just one more short story. It's a God moment. So there are things that happen in your life that God winks at you. And so as I was graduating from Georgia Southern, I had studied Spanish because I wanted to see the world. I didn't know anything except from Macon, Georgia at the time. And I couldn't find anybody that wanted to go to Costa Rica with me. I was going to backpack through Costa Rica after I graduated from college. Didn't have much money. I'd scraped up some, graduation money, a few $100s, something like that. Saturday night, I was giving up on my dream. And me and a buddy ran. It was right before they quit selling beer on Saturday night in Statesboro. So I ran into this quick store, but because I'd planned to go to Costa Rica, I had a passport and I'd left my driver's license at home. So I run in there, grab a couple of 12 packs, I throw them up on the counter, throw my passport up there, and the guy behind the cash register goes, "What do you got passport for, man?" And I was like, well, I was going to go to Costa Rica, but I couldn't make it. I couldn't find anybody that wanted to go. Don't really have any money. He goes, "You got to go to Costa Rica." He said, "I just got back from a mission trip in Costa Rica. And it's amazing. The people are fantastic and all this stuff." And here I was, knucklehead who had never been out of the country. And I just looked at it as like, God's telling me if I want to be that, that's what I've got to do. And I did. And it changed my life. It was incredible. And that was another time of just taking that leap of faith. When God winks at you, man, pay attention.
Without a doubt. Well, I'm glad you paid attention because I'm getting the benefit from the attention that you paid and the step out you did living in this city and just being a neighbor and a friend. And so I'm super, super grateful for you.
Same here, man.
Thank you for sharing it. I want to find, if you think it's the little Jimmy Mayor, I want you to make a post here because I want to defend my friend when you call him little Jimmy Mayor because that's not. He's got a big heart. and a huge desire to serve. And I'm grateful for him. So thanks for watching today. Check back next week for another great episode. Have a great day.